prettiest gifts from the submergence of Atlantis. Archaeologists roll their eyes at any mention of Atlantis.
Flat Earth for archaeologists.
Yeah,
Yeah. I want to talk about Antarctica.
I was very interested in that. There's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the human species?
Yes.
We did know that other pyramids had their entrance in the north face, and that is the entrance through which you will have gone when you entered the Great Pyramid. It's called Mamun's Hole. I'm doing a debate with a leading archaeologist on the Joe Rogan experience. It's a very good thing that this is happening. The mainstream has normally said, no, we don't want to talk to you guys, you're loony tunes, we're not going to give you a platform. But in this case, it is happening. I have things to say, and I'm going to preserve my ammunition for that. So on psychedelics, particularly on ayahuasca, I have felt the presence of the entity that I call Mother Ayahuasca. She took the form of an enormous serpent who wrapped herself around my body. I felt enormously comforted, and again I got a message that I've had many times, is that you won't be good at giving love to others if you don't love yourself.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Flagrant. And today we're incredibly excited because we're sitting down with the Godfather, okay? The Godfather of my YouTube rabbit holes for the last maybe 5 years, 6 years, years beyond that. We have Grant Hancock in the building.
Thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you. I actually went to see the pyramids because of it.
And I'm very glad to hear that.
It was a mind-bending experience.
And when was that?
This is, God, when exactly was this? 4 years ago? Pandemic kind of makes things
It was like 3.
a little murky, maybe 3, but it was pre-pandemic.
The Giza Plateau and those 3 massive pyramids and the satellite pyramids, an amazing place. And the Great Pyramid itself is totally, utterly unique, extraordinary, and special. I have a long relationship with the Great Pyramid.
I saw this unbelievable story of you going to the top. I tried to get to, I got like a quarter of the way up by myself, and I was there with my wife, and I was like, I'm not trying to get arrested and have her just be alone in Egypt. And so I put it out and went back down.
Probably a wise decision, because you could have spent some year or 2 in jail.
Wow. Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Did you get locked up when you went up top?
No, the illegal climbs that we did, the first illegal climb involved 4 o'clock in the morning and a lot of bribery. And
How much was it back in the day to get to
I'm
the
trying.
top?
This was like 1996. Might even have been earlier. It might have been 1994. And we had a local guy who made contact with all the guards around the pyramid. We paid him money. I forget the exact amount. He said he paid them off. But then when we got to the base of the pyramid, we had to walk all the way around it, which is a considerable distance, 750 feet along each side. We had to walk all the way around it, and then we had to add more money to each of the guards at the 4 corners. And then we went up, and my advice to anybody who's climbing the Great Pyramid, which is pretty much impossible these days, either legally or illegally, is go up the southwest corner. Because the southwest corner is pretty intact, it's pretty much a straight line. You can follow it all the way to the...
What is the entrance on?
north side.
That's north.
Yeah.
So south.
The opposite
West.
side, and the southwest,
Yeah.
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 Which is the opposite side to the Great Sphinx. And
And then nobody's looking at you.
well, it's good for that.
So they're all facing east
But
to pray, so
then
you got
after
the
we
whole
were a few courses up, and another guard turned up with a shotgun. I don't think he would have reached us from that distance, but there were threats, and we had to promise to pay him more money.
So he points the shotgun.
Yeah,
He's
kind of.
threatening you.
Yeah, there
You
was-
guys go, we'll pay you. And he's like, okay, now you can be off.
Basically, yeah, we did a deal that we'd pay him when we came down. And
Did you?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It's good to keep your promises. And then we climbed.
Do you remember how much you paid?
I actually don't. But back in the day, I guess it was probably 1994. It would have seemed a lot to me at that time, but it also seemed worth it. It was a fantastic adventure, starting in the dark, or just the beginning of dawn light, and climbing up to the top, taking shelter at various points behind bits as other guards appeared, finally getting to the top. And then the light coming up and just this majestic view.
So sunrise.
And
on the top.
yeah, sunrise on top of the Great Pyramid, and the second pyramid, to your south. It's just an amazing thing to see, and it's an amazing experience. I would regard it as one of the peak experiences of my life. I did have one other illegal climb, which was just fortunate. It was following the holiday of Ramadan. They have a thing called the Eid, which is a celebration, and I would guess there were 30,000 Cairenes on the Giza Plateau having picnics. and they just decided they were going to climb the Great Pyramid. Not all 30,000, but several hundred of them. And we just joined them, me and Santa, and we climbed with them. And that actually is one of the moments when I realized how difficult the Great Pyramid must have been to build. Because the biggest danger climbing up there with several hundred people on the pyramid was other people coming up and down.
So imagine managing that with all the blocks.
With all the blocks and supposedly a huge workforce and ramps or whatever the Egyptologists imagined was done, and I don't believe anybody knows how it was done.
Yeah.
For me, that was the biggest risk, was people bumping into you, going around you as you're climbing up. But again, we got to the top, and then I had 3 legal climbs in those days when those were allowed, doing various filming projects back in.
When do you see your last name inscribed in the block? This is an incredible story.
Yes, it is. I think it was on the 2nd or 3rd climb. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it may have been one of the legal type climbs because it was daylight and we were relaxed, as we were not when there were hundreds of other people up there with us. So I think it may have been on one of the legal climbs. And there I did see, and it's on the south side of the Great Pyramid, the southeast side, overlooking the boat museum, which used to be there. And there was the name initial P and Hancock. And at that time there was a date beside it, and that date, if I recall correctly, was the 5th of April 1916. Oddly enough, that
1916.
Yeah. Now my granddad was a chaplain of British forces in Egypt in the First World War, so I had to consider the possibility that it could be him. He was called Philip Hancock.
Oh wow.
But I couldn't absolutely guarantee that, and I was able to confirm it by finding my grandfather's diaries, which were little diaries about that high, tiny little writing in them. And on that date, there was a single line which said, "Climb Great Pyramid today."
Wow.
And then I found...
And it was dated 1916?
Yeah. And then I found his biography, which was passed down to me by my dad. And he also talks about his climb of the Great Pyramid in that, although in very spare terms, doesn't say that much about it.
I mean, I know it's not that much that he put in there, but did he say there was any security? Was
At
this
that time, no.
free range? Sand is covering the bottom of it?
Totally free range. And I think the sand was definitely cleared away at that time. But anybody could climb the Great Pyramid. And there was, in fact, the guy who organized our first illegal climb, and I think I can say this safely because he's passed on to the next world, was a guy known locally as Champion. And he was called Champion because he was the champion runner up the Great Pyramid. He could run all the way to the top of the Great Pyramid. There were times people did that, and it was totally legal, and nobody objected to it at all. And that went on, I think, certainly through the sort of 70s and 80s. But by the time my wife Santa and I climbed 1994 for the first time, I'm pretty sure it was 94. It had become illegal, and now it's totally illegal. It's completely banned.
Yeah.
And I doubt even if a film crew would get permission to climb the Great Pyramid now.
Even like that.
Yeah, they're very careful about it. But and one of the reasons why they're careful about it is that every year at least one person dies trying to climb the Great Pyramid. People still try to climb it illegally. And as you can imagine from a bit of the climb you did, you're looking at a 52-degree slope.
Yeah.
So once you get up 150 feet above the ground, if you lose it and fall,
It's over.
you're going to go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's over. Yeah.
In the beginning, you have a lot of confidence. The first few tiers of rocks seem pretty easy.
They're not too bad.
But I can imagine you're halfway up and you start looking down, and it is over if you slip.
Totally over. And also, the course sizes vary. Some of them are
Yeah, the rocks
really
get-
no more than sort of hip high. Some of the courses are chest high, so you've got to...
Courses are the blocks.
Yeah, I mean, it's laid out in layers. So, it looks like a step pyramid now. It wasn't before.
Yeah.
In ancient times, it was covered with facing stones. It
And
was
you can see some of the facing stones.
Some of the facing
still there.
stones are still there down at the bottom of the Great Pyramid. They give you a sense of how beautiful they were and how magnificently well it was made. But the theory is, there's no absolute proof of this, that they came off during an earthquake in, I believe, 1301. and at that time it's likely that that's when the Great Pyramid lost its summit. Great Pyramid stands at the moment about 450, maybe 455 feet tall, but its original height was 481 feet tall. And you can calculate that from just pursuing the slope of the sides up to the...
30 feet came off?
Yeah,
in that earthquake.
yeah. So there's a flat platform, or rather even a stepped platform on top of the Great Pyramid with one level and then one level, another level. But the calculation is very simple. You just pursue those side lengths up to where they would meet. And according to that calculation, the Great Pyramid was originally 481 feet tall.
Wow.
So it lost about 30 feet. The question is, was it in fact ever completed? We don't know that for sure.
Right.
But the general view is that that earthquake brought part of the top of the Great Pyramid tumbling down as well and knocked off the facing stones. And then, of course, it was used as a quarry.
That's
by local people.
what I've heard, yeah.
You know, because it's very, very useful to have all this nice cut stone lying around. And a lot of those facing stones were taken away.
Okay, so after inspiring probably tens of thousands of people to go to the pyramids like myself, you managed to get banned from Egypt?
Yes.
Is it a real full-time ban?
This is not clear to me. We
gotta sneak in, Greg.
in my
we gotta do one more time.
There's a champion junior that you can bribe.
Dude, we need a carved G Hancock right next to Pete
I
Hancock.
think this would be good. It's very difficult to do that with a film crew, however.
That's a very good
And this is
point.
when it happened. Is that my Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse? We wanted to film an episode in Egypt, which you would have thought the Egyptian authorities would welcome. But when they asked who is presenting the show, and we said that Graham Hancock is presenting the show, they said absolutely no way, and they would not grant filming permission.
Let me tell you something. The Four Seasons in Cairo wants you to do an episode about the pyramids. I promise you.
Yeah, it would bring a lot of interest and a lot of people, but there's a rigid, fixed view amongst Egyptologists about the prehistory and the history of ancient Egypt.
So
and what the Great
questioning
Pyramid is.
that.
Questioning that gets you banned.
Yes.
That's the first line of defense against a critic or an alternative point of view.
Yes.
Is simply to deny them access to the site. And I've felt since that happened that I've had my left arm cut off.
Yeah.
Because Egypt has been very central and very important to my work.
Yeah.
I hope eventually I will get back in. Could I go as a tourist? Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Announcements. I'm coming to the motherland. Play the bagpipes, Miles. That's right. The Life Tour is coming to Glasgow. Okay? Scotland, we're showing up. We're also coming to Dublin. Ireland, we're showing up. And you know what? We are not going to leave the north of England out. Manchester, we are pulling up. Is it Man City or Man United? We're going to see who's in the crowd. And whoever shows up more, that's who I'm rooting for the rest of my existence. So make sure you make the right decision, red or blue, because that's who I'm rocking with afterwards. Okay, those tickets are up for pre-sale right now. Code is Andrew. Get them fast. TheAndrewSchultz.com. Can't wait to see you all. Also, thank you so much, everybody who sold out the Royal Albert Hall show in London. We did that in a few hours. That was unbelievable. Thank you so much. Cannot wait to do the show in that remarkable venue. TheAndrewSchultz.com for all the tickets. Go get them immediately before they're gone. Can't wait to see you all. Peace.
Did the legal crimes, were they aware you had did 2 illegal crimes previously?
Yeah.
Oh, and they still gave you permission?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
At that time, everything was much less sensitive. Everything was much less sensitive until 2015, when I had the beginnings of a public debate with who is regarded as the leading Egyptian Egyptologist, Zahi Hawass. And unfortunately, in that debate, Zahi, it's actually on YouTube, bits of it, because there was a member of the audience present. Zahi massively lost his temper and stormed out. And then...
So you won.
Then, I don't know, but the debate didn't happen. Then I gave a talk. He sat sulking outside. Then he came back, gave his talk. Then the audience asked questions. And again, bits of this were filmed. And one of the audience asked him if he knew about a site called Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is probably the most important archaeological site in the world at the moment. And Zahi said that he didn't know anything about it at all, and that was on camera. So unfortunately, the man is actually enormously knowledgeable about ancient Egypt, but unfortunately he came across looking not very good. And ever since then, my relationship with him, which had been okay until 2015, has been extremely negative. And when the Egyptian government are approached for filming permission, which these days is done through the Tourism and Antiquities Permission, when they're approached for filming permission, Zahi's the guy they go to and say, is it okay for these people to come in and film? So
Gotcha. So if you have beef with him, then it's not going to happen.
it's difficult.
And I understand the defensiveness because when you wrap your cultural identity around something or creating something as majestic as the pyramids, feeling as if that's like being ripped away from you can really make you feel as if your identity is being taken.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would never wish to divorce the Great Pyramids from the ancient Egyptians. There are a lot of wrong ideas about what I think about this.
Please clarify, because I'm lazy.
The clarification is this. It's complicated, all right? But inside the Great Pyramid, there are 4 very narrow shafts which point up at the sky. 2 of them point north and south from the so-called King's Chamber. I say so-called because no burial was ever found in it.
Yeah.
There was a sarcophagus found in it. It's still there, but they had to build the chamber around it. They couldn't bring it up in a funeral ceremony. It's too big to get through the corridor. So 2 shafts point north and south, and they do actually exit on the outside of the body of the pyramid. And back in the 19th century, explorers climbed up there. There they go. You're looking at the King's Chamber South, King's Chamber North, and both of those, you could roll cannonballs down them from the outside, and they would turn up in the King's Chamber. But the shafts of the Queen's Chamber are more complicated. Until, I believe it was 1872, nobody knew they were there. The inner wall of the Queen's Chamber was completely smooth, but there was actually he was a Freemason called John Wayneman Dixon, who had explored the King's Chamber, and he figured, look, there's shafts in the King's Chamber, maybe there's shafts in the Queen's Chamber. And he went around knocking on the walls, and he found 2 hollow points, and he broke those through. You could do that in 1872. And lo and behold, they opened up into these 2 shafts, which go horizontally at first, and then point up at the sky. They do not exit on the outside of the pyramid. They're very, very mysterious. The thing is that the angle of those shafts points to significant stars, 4 significant stars, in the period in which Egyptologists believe that the Great Pyramid was built. Archaeoastronomy, which is a universal language, one of them is the lowest of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And the constellation of Orion was identified with the god Osiris. He was seen as the celestial image of the god Osiris. So having a shaft pointing at the belt of Orion or Osiris makes perfect sense. And others point at 2 of the 2 northern shafts point at 2 of the circumpolar stars. I forget exactly which ones now. And again, they point at them in the era when the pyramids were built, because the positions of stars in the sky change very slowly down the ages. So from an astronomical point of view, it would be absurd to disconnect the Great Pyramid entirely from the ancient Egyptians.
What's up, my man? Yeah, I'm wasting a lot of time. I'm losing a lot of runs like that, but I don't know.
Orion's belt has 3 stars, and that the Great Pyramid.
I'm also adding a quick pause on the double door. I'm doing 2 quick pauses now. Hopefully that changes things. I'm getting it down a little bit better. It's not exactly like 64, but it's pretty close. What's up, bro? I'm probably gonna keep warping them though.
Down to his feet, and that's what you have on the ground at Gyges.
It's that perfect.
It's that perfect, but it's only perfect 12,500 years ago, roughly 12,000.
Yeah, I'm finally getting it down.
12,000 years ago.
Yeah.
These changes in the sky are actually caused by a motion of the Earth itself. It's a very slow motion. It's a cycle. It takes 25,920 years to complete. The pattern of the stars on the ground and the stars in the sky and the pyramids on the ground and their relationship to the Nile River.
I'm feeling confident though about tonight.
Locks perfectly
At 12,000.
about 12,000 years ago. Not on a single day, but over
I
a
don't know.
block of about 1,000 years, and then it gradually shifts.
I'm like,
out.
I had some
This is
really
a very,
close
very
runs
slow
yesterday.
change that takes place. So you have the ground saying 12,500 years ago, and you have the shaft saying 4,500 years ago.
So one might assume that those shafts were maybe carved out at a different time, potentially?
Well, yes. The way I look at it is, I think the site was sacred more than 12,000 years ago.
Right.
I think ground platforms were created there. It's important to remember the Great Pyramid is already built around a natural hill. The first 30 feet inside the Great Pyramid is a natural mound, and there are traditions in ancient Egypt of the primeval mound.
Oh, what?
And if you enter the Great Pyramid,
Thanks, buddy.
and you may or may not have been able to do that when you went there. Did you get down to the subterranean chamber?
I think everything was. Oh no, we did. The subterranean was much bigger.
Was it a very rough-hewn chamber, cut out of solid bedrock, or was it a built chamber?
There's the built one that we saw. Is it called a sarcophagus? No.
Yes, that's the King's Chamber.
We went to the King's Chamber,
Yeah.
but I believe that there was another one. I
Well,
can't remember.
you can see that on the screen there. You can see the subterranean chamber. You see in the entrance in the north face.
Yeah. No, I don't think we went that
And
far.
then
we went to.
okay.
Yeah.
It's about 100 feet vertically beneath the base of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's about 600 feet beneath the apex of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's cut out of solid bedrock. And my view is, and it's only a theory, and I don't claim that I'm correct, it's just put this forward for thought, is that the original sacred site on the Giza Plateau...
To grow your stream and connect to the community, Lucy has the freshest memes, so it's a win-win.
Hewed out this enormous subterranean chamber, which is it looks like a rough, unfinished chamber, but it has curious acoustic effects. Which are in themselves very interesting. And then
that people talk about.
it's an amazing place to be, and actually you get a resonance. We tried an experiment with an
What up,
opera
Gyges?
singer,
What up, Ed? Thanks for being here.
up in the King's Chamber. You could hear her down in the subterranean chamber, which is quite remarkable in itself. But I think that was the original sacred site. I think the ground platforms were put in position, and I think the ancient Egyptians finished off the job in a brilliant way. Overbuilding and commemorating and memorizing a site of enormous significance and importance to them.
Sorry, when you say finished off, I'm dumb, so I'm going to ask dumb questions. When you say finished off, what exactly do you theorize?
I think the vast majority of the Great Pyramids as we see them today were the work of the ancient Egyptians.
Okay, got
But I
it.
think they were building on a prehistoric foundation.
Okay.
And it had been sacred for
So your point is
thousands
not to take away from what you think they built most of it. You think we're just discounting that there might have been people here 12,500 years ago that also built it.
Correct, because that runs against the archaeological mainstream, and this is where you get into issues of geology and the issue.
I also had a lot of boost out 16s yesterday. I'm thinking if I get the quick pause in, hopefully I will get boosted out less.
Just my view is that on the Giza Plateau were the three massive ground platforms of the three Great Pyramids, the subterranean chamber beneath what is now the Great Pyramid, the megalithic temples, the so-called Bali temple and the Sphinx temple right beside the Sphinx, and the so-called mortuary temples. These are all megalithic that stand beside the Great Pyramids.
Those are the three little ones that are next to them?
Those are the so-called satellite pyramids.
Okay.
But there are megalithic temples. When I say megalithic, you're looking at structures where the largest single block weighs 200 tons. These are gigantic blocks of stone. But of particular interest, right in front of the Great Sphinx is an almost completely ruined one, and then just to the south of the Great Sphinx is a rather intact one called the Bali Temple. And this temple bears evidence of being built in two stages. Because when you look at it, you see that its core is made of limestone, enormous limestone blocks in the range of 50 to 100 tons each, maybe more.
You can bring this up, Mark?
In the one on the left, you can see the limestone blocks up at the top. That's the original structure. And I and my colleagues, and particularly Professor Robert Schock from Boston University, who is a geologist, are of the view that the ancient Egyptians renovated a far more ancient limestone temple. So you can see the weathering on the limestone temple, and then you can see the granite blocks that were added by the ancient Egyptians. And the puzzle of those blocks is that they are carefully cut to fit around the weathering in the limestone core blocks. So they were respecting those limestone core blocks. They weren't demolishing them. It would be easy just to cut them flat, if you're going to do this, but no, they didn't. They carefully cut each granite block so it would fit around the weathering pattern.
We'd only do that if you thought that a place was sacred.
You felt it was special, and you were trying to preserve it. Likewise, the again,
This
I need
shit,
to pay tribute to us.
18?
I need to pay tribute
I don't know.
to
I'll see
George
how this
West,
double quick
who
pause
came
is
into
going, but I might have to. I
brilliant,
might switch back to the single. I don't know.
Passed away in 2018. He used to call academics quackademics. He was a master of vitriol. And he was the first to draw attention to the possibility that the Great Sphinx may also be a multi-phase monument, not just a monument built in the 4th dynasty, 2500 BC or whatever. He
Carl Jobs,
pointed out
always
that
with the
there
big
seemed to be
brain.
strange erosion patterns there, harder to see on the body.
Fissures. There might be on the wall.
But on the surrounding trench, they're much easier to see. And then he brought Professor Robert Schoch from Boston University, who is a geologist, and Schoch agreed that what we're looking at here in the fissures around the side of the Great Sphinx, and to some extent on the body of the Sphinx, is what's called precipitation-induced weathering. It's not a flood.
Yeah.
It's weathering that's caused by exposure to a very long period of heavy rain.
Right.
And then you have to get into paleoclimatology. When did it rain on the Giza Plateau enough to cause this level of exposure and weathering? You can see the outer trench. The Great Sphinx is cut out of solid bedrock. They created a trench around its body, and the core body was left in place. I and my colleagues think that core body goes back 12,000 plus years. It was originally in the form entirely of a lion with a massive leonine head. But then, by the time that the dynastic period of ancient Egypt came along, the Great Sphinx was very damaged, particularly its head, jutting up above the plateau. And we suggest that at that time, the head of the Great Sphinx was recarved into a human head wearing a classic Nemes headdress of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh.
Can you bring up quickly the Sphinx that is covered up to its neck in sand? So this is what the ancient Egyptians probably were looking at.
Yeah,
right?
they were looking at a monument cover, yeah, like that.
I mean, this is
there's many times during its history when that's all there was. You know, that was the bit that got damaged, and we think back 4,500 years ago, 2,500 BC, it was like that.
I might just do the single pause, honestly, bro. I don't know. See, like you just.
And they felt they're going
I
to
don't know.
recarve it into a human head, and it is out of proportion
Like
with
what?
the rest of the body.
Which again does give credit to the Egyptians. I'm just trying to cozy you up to the Egyptian government here.
we want you back in.
Also, the Hebrews are okay with this.
I think the ancient Egyptians massively venerated this site from the beginning. It was the place of the beginning. It was the
Right.
place of the first time.
Yeah.
A time that they called Zet Tepi. And I think their project was to honor and memorialize it. And then this is where we get into spooky areas which the Egyptologists don't like, which is I'm suggesting
spooky
that a body of knowledge was carried down within ancient Egyptian culture, and that a certain moment came when it was decided to turn the Giza Plateau back on again, and that body of knowledge was manifested in the construction of the Great Pyramids. It's very peculiar that the quality of workmanship on the Great Pyramid, and indeed on the other two pyramids at Giza, is extremely high. But go a generation later, 2 generations later, to the 5th dynasty.
Nice, man.
Go to the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara.
I don't really eat butter though,
Where the
so
so-called pyramid
I can't
text
really
is
trust.
inside the so-called tomb chamber.
Restaurant mac and cheese.
That pyramid,
Imagine it's pretty
exterior of it is
fatty.
a mess. It's very poorly built. It's very poorly constructed.
I might be wrong,
You
though.
look at it, it just looks like a heap of stones. Whereas the Great Pyramid today is still a majestic structure.
Yeah.
So it's as though they put everything they had into the
Try to replicate it, but they just
try to replicate, and then a generation or two later they could.
here,
That's the Pyramid of Unas. You know?
What if it's just like the Knicks, where like the father did a really good job, and then the next generation just really fucked the whole thing up?
Yeah, I mean it could be, but it's
pointless
it's
shots
it's
on my team. Like he is.
no, it's a fair point. You know, I mean, human societies go up and down, and that can happen. But that's my view also with the idea of a lost civilization, that we can have an apex and they can fall into.
Oh, yeah,
a
me
cycle
too.
and come out again. But is knowledge preserved and passed down through the ages? Yes.
I cannot though.
Now, why would
Yeah.
the people in the Nile Valley
I understand
at
what you're
that time, 12,000 years ago also not be Egyptian? Like, could they still be ethnically Egyptian at that time?
Well, I think in a way, I'm actually deeply uninterested in ethnic matters. When I come to relate to and evaluate a fellow human being or a culture, I'm interested in the ideas that those people have. I'm not interested in their genes. I think actually genes are vastly overrated. They're the least important aspect of a human being. They've been blown up into huge importance in our culture today, but I think skin color, genes, ethnicity, none of these things really matter. Human beings are the same all over the world. It's been my privilege to travel the world intensely for the best part of 40 years. And whether I go to the remotest village in the remotest corner of the Amazon, or whether I find myself in New York City, once I get down to talking face to face with a fellow human being, they're just a fellow human being, just like me. And they have the same hopes, the same dreams, the same fears as every other human being. So I think we make too many divisions. I love cultural differences. Cultural differences are great. Differences in ideas are great, but genetic differences are trivial in my view. The things that divide us as human beings are far less important than the things that unite us as human beings. I think maybe it's high time we recognize that. So
What was that, like, side boost? That's so
whether the
dumb.
modern
Whatever.
Egyptians are ethnically connected in any close way to the ancient Egyptians is a matter that I regard as fundamentally unimportant. The modern Egyptians also honor and respect the Great Pyramids and ancient Egyptian
Wow.
culture. And that's
Insane.
That's what matters to me.
That was with the double click pause too, but the boost out.
About the criticism that you got
If I didn't get boosted out,
you're racist after the Netflix update.
Well,
Interesting.
that criticism was
well, you know what I mean? Like, we're fucking really close.
You kind of let me down with this whole everyone's equal talk.
That was interesting. The subject of race is never mentioned in my Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse. It's never mentioned at all. But when the Society for American Archaeologists wrote an open letter to Netflix demanding that my documentary series be reclassified as science fiction, they accused me of spreading racism, white supremacy, misogyny, and anti-Semitism. None of these issues are ever mentioned in the series.
Wait, what was misogynist?
Yeah.
I don't know, and you know, what for that matter was anti-Semitic. It's very, and what was racist, since race is never mentioned. But what these labels are very useful for, if you shout them loudly enough, and if your friends in the media see a nice story here and pick them up and multiply it, what they're very useful for is turning people off the work of an opponent.
Yes.
And that was clearly what went on here.
You're radioactive. I don't even have to debate you because you're radioactive.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally what went on. Now, what is the reason for what was the possible? They had no justification for any of the others, but what was the reason for saying that I was spreading racism and white supremacy? It's because in a number of my earlier books, I reported indigenous myths and traditions, particularly from South America and from Mexico, which in some cases referred to a white-skinned, bearded stranger and his companions who came after a time of darkness, after a great cataclysm, bringing knowledge and teaching knowledge to the inhabitants of the country. Now, that is not me saying that. That is indigenous traditions. The view of archaeologists today is that many of those traditions were simply made up by the Spanish conquistadors.
What? Like every fucking time, man.
I don't think that's true.
18, wow.
There are many other archaeologists who don't agree with that and think that they are true and genuine indigenous traditions and should be rightly reported as such. Whether we're referring to Quetzalcoatl in Mexico or to Viracocha in the Andes. These traditions, it's a pan-American myth, and they're not only found in the Americas, but all over the world. They don't always refer to a person as white skin. You know, the emphasis that's put on skin color today is really recent in human history. It's a few hundred years old. Did the issue of white skin or black skin carry the same resonance 12,000 years ago that it carries today? I somehow doubt it. I doubt it very much. I don't see why it should, because the abuses of human rights that were carried out in the name of color are recent developments. They're not ancient developments, you know. And
Recent in the scale of human history.
Recent in the scale of human history.
No, why?
Let's say the last.
Didn't I miss the start button, guys? I missed the start button. That's what happened.
It's a huge distraction from the main.
There's no way to lie.
They also refer to these individuals.
I don't. It might not have
as
been
being
paste, but that's
bearded.
what happened.
They often refer to there being 7 of them. In ancient Mesopotamia, they're called the 7 sages. In ancient Egypt, at the Temple of Horus at Edfu, they are also referred to as the 7 sages. In ancient India, it's Manu and the seven sages.
This
who
game,
appear
man.
After the flood,
fucking game.
trying to restore the knowledge that was lost during the time of the flood. These are indigenous traditions.
Same story, different parts of the world.
Same story, different parts of the world. That's one of the things that interests me about it. What interests me about it least of all is the issue of skin color. What interests me about it most of all is the issue that there seems to be a memory of a cataclysm after which a group of people tried to preserve knowledge from
Is
before
this the
the
Snow White myth?
I'm not sure.
She falls asleep, the 7 dwarfs, or the 7 sages, they come wake her up with the wisdom of a guy should make out with you when you're passed out.
I need to reread the Snow White.
There might be something there. This is good.
Yeah. Well, no, because myths are the memory bank of our species.
This is what I loved about it.
Yo, what's up, Sailor Chris? What's up, bro? What's up, man?
And yeah,
How are you, buddy?
taking them seriously, not looking at them as figments of imagination. If we were to pass on data, in fact, it's way more digestible in the form of story. We memorize stories.
If you wish to pass,
Yeah, I don't know if we can, dude.
Pass information to a distant future. You wish to preserve it,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be smart
Nice,
to just
buddy.
write it down. How can we know that our script is going to be readable by any other culture? Let's say 10,000 years in the future. Will anybody be able to read the English language? Who knows? I have no idea.
My friend, did someone pass away in real life? Did one of your Sea of Thieves friends pass away in the game or in real life? Was that the stream yesterday you were doing? I'm sorry about that, my friend. I don't know. I really am.
In Pakistan, and then they found that there were these actually very, very sophisticated, very complex mud brick structures on a very large scale. Then they began to look at it. Then they found that this culture had a language, a fully developed written.
So it was a meme. It was a meme. I get it. Okay, like a fucking. I get it. Like a WoW person passing away or whatever. I get it. That's funny.
The script exists, but we can't read it. So there could be all kinds of information in that script, which tells all kinds of things about our past, but it's not readable.
And how long ago were they thriving?
5,000 years ago.
That's good.
One of the interesting things in the Indus Valley civilization is that there is a particular seal that has survived, a seal that would have been used to stamp an imprint onto cloth or something like that. It's called the Pasupati seal, and it shows a figure which is recognizable as the god Shiva. Who's of course an important deity in Indian culture to this day, and in the Vedas, and it shows that individual seated in that's the Pasupati seal. Well, what you'll see is that
I'm really bad at this double click
the way
pause.
his feet are organized is that his heels are pointed forwards. This is a really difficult yoga position, to sit like that and have your heels pointed forward.
It's not it. It's not it.
Disjoint your legs in order to do that. Okay, and the problem.
I'm gonna get boosted out
It's
too.
an advanced yoga position. It's found in a seal that's 5,000 years old. We have to ask ourselves how many thousands of years before that was yoga being developed.
Shit.
You know, again, there's a hint of a lost human culture in this. The posture is called Mulavandasana. And I certainly can't do it.
Unbelievable. Because what do we date modern Indian civilization back to? Is it 5,000 years
since
ago?
the Indus,
4,000.
yeah, since the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization, you know, we have to.
Yeah, I'll
accept
get better at this
civilization
quick
in
pause.
India is at least 5,000 years old. The
I hope.
largely and correctly discredited notion of an Aryan invasion of India needs to be abandoned as well. Yes, there were multiple cultures moving back and forwards, but Indian culture is extremely ancient.
5,000 years ago.
Yeah. And
Indus Valley, that's like a thing you'll learn about in textbooks.
yeah, you learn about it now.
Accepted, yeah.
But what most people don't realize was nobody knew it even existed. It wasn't lost
And
civilization.
the language is completely independent. There's no connectivity to anything.
Nobody can connect it to anything. We don't know what it was. There's some suggestion that it may have been Dravidian peoples, the peoples who are now found primarily in southern India, people of the Tamils.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, my wife is Tamil.
Gotcha.
And that's been very helpful to us when we've been researching in southern India. We did a lot of diving in southern. My wife is a photographer and a diver, as I am, and we did a lot of diving in southern India. So it was great to be able to talk for her to be able to talk in their own language to Tamil fishermen and Tamil divers and see if they'd seen any weird stuff underwater, which they certainly had. And they took us to diving on structures that are a fully formed city off the town of Mahabalipuram.
Now, you speak about this in the documentary, but I think this is really important to understand as well, that most of human civilization has been organized around water, right? Close proximity to water, obviously you can fish, travel, etc. And as the water levels change, some of those ancient cities could be completely covered.
Yes.
You've recovered some of these, you've seen
This is
other
one of
people.
the things that I think is missing from our understanding of the past.
I went too wide. No, and back boost.
That in that open
That's the start you need, though. That's exactly the start you need.
Archaeologists claim that they could absolutely for certain be sure that there was no lost civilization during the Ice Age. They knew it was a fact, and if there had been any civilization, they would have found it and they would have published it.
Right.
Well, how do they know that there was no lost civilization then? Because it's really important to understand that archaeology is often driven by accidental finds. A lot of archaeology, particularly in the industrialized countries, is the result of somebody building. There's a huge building project going on. Maybe a housing estate is going to be built.
Yeah.
Maybe a road is going to be built. Maybe a railway is going to be built. Maybe a dam is going to be built. And then let's call in the archaeologists to make sure that we're not going to wreck any ancient archaeology while we're doing this. And that's a lot of archaeological discoveries are made as a result of that,
Right.
rather than of targeted inquiries. The second issue with ruling out completely the possibility of a lost civilization is that archaeology sets itself up as the sole arbiter as to what is and what is not evidence. So I and my colleagues argue that we should consider the possibility of a much older Great Sphinx, as we've just been discussing, on the basis of its geology. I'm just going to add a more complicated point. It's not only the geology. The Great Sphinx points perfectly due east. The sun rises perfectly due east on the spring equinox. If you go to the Giza Plateau or anywhere else in the world on the northern hemisphere, on the summer solstice, you're going to see the sun rising far to the north of east. Go there on the winter solstice, you're going to see it far to the south of east.
I think that was just
But on
so
the spring
dumb.
equinox,
That was
it
really
rises
dumb.
perfectly due east, directly in line with the gaze of the Sphinx. The Sphinx is looking at where the sun rises at dawn on the 21st of March in our calendar. Now, because of this wobble on the Earth's axis,
What is that called again, the wobble?
it's called precession.
Precession, yeah.
Imagine a spinning top, which is spinning and is kind of doing this.
Yep.
And that's the viewing platform from which we observe the stars and the sun and the moon and everything else. And obviously the changes in its orientation are going to change their orientation. And that's why we get the astrological ages. Again, mainstream science sneers at these things, but it is a simple astronomical fact that there are 12 constellations that lie along the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic, and they are the constellations of the zodiac. And right now we live in the age of Pisces, very near the end of the age of Pisces. It's a simple fact that the ancient Christians go back about 2,000 years.
Ah, the fish.
The fish was
What
their
the
thing.
fuck, man?
Before that, it was Aries, the ram. Ancient Egyptian symbolism at that time was very much focused on rams. Go back before that, it's the age of Taurus, roughly the Pyramid Age. That's why if you were building a huge 270-foot long rock-hewn monument in the Pyramid Age, you'd be more likely to make it in the form of a bull than in the form of a lion.
Yeah.
Of a lion.
Oh,
because there is a time when you go back, guess when, about 12,000 years, that you find it's the constellation of Leo that is rising behind the sun. That's the age of Leo. Just as we live in the age of Pisces, that was the age of Leo. And there was a time when that monument would have looked directly at the place where the sun rises. First, it would have seen its own celestial counterpart, the constellation of Leo, sitting on the horizon, and then the sun rising beneath it. So to us, this, and I speak of myself, Robert Boval, Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, and a few others, we think it makes more sense. Take the geology, take the astronomy. This monument has its origins 12,000 years ago. But Egyptologists say, no, we know the Sphinx was built 4,500 years ago. I'm not going to bore your audience with the details, but the evidence is incredibly flimsy. There isn't a single document that attributes the Great Sphinx to Khafre, who is supposed to be the builder of the Great Sphinx. There's nothing. It's just opinion, pure opinion. And we think that they are not right to dismiss the case for a much older sphinx, and to say that. So they select
Like what?
evidence is evidence and what evidence isn't evidence.
Like,
That's
come
the
on.
second thing. And then the third and final thing is that huge areas of the world that have never been looked at by archaeology at all, or if looked at by archaeology, looked at only
Oh
minimally.
wow, insane.
Oh
wow.
The most important are the flooded continental shelves.
Says it like so matter of factly, like what?
Years of our lives, frequently risking our lives, scuba diving all around the world. Sea level rose 400 feet at the end of the last
Like
ice
what?
age. Let's be clear, it did not rise 400 feet overnight.
Right.
This was a rise that was extended over a period of 11 or 12,000 years, from about 21,000 years ago down to 10,000. It was even still rising about 6,000 years ago.
All over the world? 400
All over
feet?
the world, yeah. There was a global, all the world's oceans are connected, and but in local areas, if you have a very steep coastline, the effect of
I
the
wonder
sea
if
level rise,
Honda
the amount of land it eats up is going to be a lot less than if you
has
have
done
a
any like
sloping
AI training
and 120
You know what I mean?
sea level rise on a very
for
steep
propaganda,
bit of coast is going to remove relatively less
for
than
AI
that.
propaganda.
Whereas on a very sloping bit of coast, it's going to inundate much more land. And the calculation is that
I
27
can't
million
believe
square
you wrote
kilometers
that.
was above water
That's
during the Ice
insane.
Age is underwater
That's
now.
crazy.
Roughly, I think that's roughly 10
Based
million
Carl
square
Jobs.
miles. I can't do the math in my head, but something like that. So it's an awful
That's
lot
insane.
of land. I think it's Europe and China added together. It's not that there's been no archaeology done on the continental shelves. I think we're looking at something from Alexandria here.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. I've dived there as well, and that's inundated not because of sea level rise, but because of subsidence of the Nile silts. Alexandria stands on the Nile Delta, and the silts subsided and resulted in
What
the
are the
flooding of this.
silts?
The Nile carries a lot of silt with it, a lot of earth with it, as it flows out of Uganda and out of Ethiopia and northwards into Egypt, and you come to the Nile Delta, and all that earth it's carrying, which also provided the fertility of ancient Egypt, all that silt is then dumped in the Nile Delta, and there were constructions were made on top of it, and the submergence of the sites off Alexandria, which is a magical, spooky place to dive, by the way. I've been lucky enough to dive there. The submergence of those sites is largely because of subsidence of land rather than sea level rise, because it's relatively recent.
So if
sites
you're
are
saying
not
the silt itself has dropped.
yeah.
Right.
So
Because
anything
it
built on
wasn't
top,
solid ground.
anything built
got
on top of it went down.
Guys, I'm in different clothes. Why is that? Because we were able to add another special taping.
Wow,
at White
insane.
Music Hall. I'm fighting to get everybody in. I appreciate the demand so much. So, tickets are being released today, the day this comes out. 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. That's Texas time. So hurry up and buy the tickets, please. I appreciate the demand so much. I want to get everybody in that I can. Also, speaking of adding shows, we are adding shows at Zany's in Nashville, July 14th and 15th. The 13th is sold out. I believe I'm going to be in Huntsville on the 12th. Also, I got a bunch more shows. Please check the website because tickets are selling out for these shows, and I don't have time. We gotta get ready for everything.
LOL.
But thank you guys
I
so
think
much.
he
All right,
used the
see you
double
guys.
on his
Hurry up and
16. I
buy.
can't remember though.
Also, guys, if
I might
you
be
need
wrong.
tickets to a show that might happen to be sold out, again, my special taping is an example. You know where you can find them? SeatGeek. Look at that. Akash Singh tickets. And what's even better is SeatGeek will tell you how good or bad a deal is. Whatever tickets you need. If you see a green dot next to the ticket price, that means it's good. You should buy it. Red means don't buy it yet. Hold off. Something better is coming. No other ticket app is doing this for you. SeatGeek is where it's at. There are 28 million downloads on SeatGeek. It's a #1 rated ticketing app for a reason. And there are 70,000 events listed every single day. That includes concerts, sporting events, music festivals, and more. Also, if you need Andrew Schultz tickets, wherever you are on the globe, SeatGeek might be able to help you. Why don't you look at that? And just because we at Flagrant always come through for you, we got a code. Use Flagrant for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. Again, that's $20 off your first purchase.
Come on,
with
man.
the promo code Flagrant. Make sure you do that right now. Just download the SeatGeek app on your phone. Buy your first tickets. Use a promo code Flagrant. You get $20 off. Now let's get back to the show.
Why is it a spooky place to dive?
Well, because you're coming across statues underwater, you're coming across columns underwater. The visibility is not perfect. It's a little bit kind of weird. And it's just magical in diving on an underwater city. But I cannot claim, and I do not claim that city is 12,000 years old. No, it's not. But I do claim that in connection with a giant stone circle called of Akijima in the Kerama Islands in Japan, which is 30 meters under sea level, where there has been no land subsidence, where you can calculate that it's been underwater for 12,000 years.
Yes, this starts good.
I do absolutely claim that
Let's
in
go.
terms of the enormous structures that lie off the coast of Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu in southeast India. Kumpar, a little further south, there's a huge U-shaped structure underwater there that Santha and I dived on with a team from the National Institute of Oceanography in India. There are many
What is that guard
careful
doing there,
underwater
guys?
structures, you know,
Guys,
that all
what is that guard
conditions
doing
that have
there?
led to their submergence. And in some cases, it's very clear that they've been underwater for a very, very, very long time indeed. Malta, which we featured in Ancient Apocalypse.
Wait, when you went to Malta, did you go? Malta's the one that's divided. There's like an active civil war going on, right?
No, not for a long time.
Of course, like of
There's
course.
like a Turkish side and then a Orthodox Christian side, and there's basically like a border that they just kind of built.
No, not in
Am I not thinking of-
Cyprus. Not in Malta.
Oh, am I thinking
could
about
be,
Cyprus?
Yeah, could be,
Okay, my
could be
bad.
Cyprus.
Okay.
No,
Malta's a wonderful tax haven and a good place to shoot.
Malta's a piece. Malta's
So
a
I guess
piece.
it was
has been for a
Cyprus.
long time. But Malta used to be joined to Sicily during the Ice Age. Malta wasn't an island; it was part of the mainland.
Yeah.
Part of Italy, Sicily, all the way out to Malta was all above water during
Right.
the Ice Age and all underwater now. So one of my interests as a diver is what do we find underwater in Malta? And what you find strikingly underwater in Malta is a repetition.
I was
of some
playing the
cart
boost
ruts that you find above
that
water
I didn't get.
as well, which have never been properly.
Cart ruts?
Yes, they're parallel tracks that are cut into the bedrock on the island of Malta. And they look actually like railway tracks in a way. I'm not claiming they were a railway, but they look, that's just a comparison. And there are even junctions in them. And nobody knows what they are. The word cart ruts is what they're called, but the notion that they were gradually cut out by carts being rolled over them doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It looks like they've been cut by hand, but more interesting is the fact that they continue underwater. And we've dived on those cart ruts down to 27 meters, which is 80, 90 feet maybe underwater. They've been underwater for thousands and thousands of years.
And
So then the issue becomes, are we secure on the dating of all the structures above water in Malta? And I suggest strongly that we're not.
Yeah.
There's been very little carbon dating done on the Maltese temples. That carbon dating is itself insecure. I'm doing a debate with a leading archaeologist on the
Come
Joe
on,
Rogan
man.
experience on the 24th of October.
Joe be having people debate, huh? That's his thing.
It's a very good thing that this is happening. It's the first time that somebody representing the alternative point of view has actually been debated by somebody from the mainstream. The mainstream has normally said, "Now we don't want to talk to you guys. You're Looney Tunes. We're not going to give you a platform." But in this case, it is happening, and I have things to say about Malta.
Wow,
that I
insane.
don't
That was
deserve
crazy.
recognition for.
Can you give us a taste? Can you give us a little taste?
It's to do with the absolute insecurity of the carbon dating.
Do you think there's any submerged pyramids?
Just to finish that point, carbon dating, by the way, and again, this is not something that everybody knows. Carbon dating can only date organic material. It can't date stone. So if you're going to date a megalith according to the organic material found around you, you want to be pretty sure that the organic material dates from the same time as the megalith and wasn't introduced later. Right.
And there's no way of proving that it is or it isn't.
Well, it's
right?
very
shield on it.
difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do. And the fact is, there are very few carbon dates from Malta, and the new dating work that's been done there hasn't added usefully to that database.
And when are you doing this on Joe's pod?
So 24th of October.
Tune in.
The archaeologist who's going to debate me is called Flint Dibble. He's American, but he teaches at the University of Cardiff in Wales, in Britain. His father was a famous archaeologist called Harold Dibble. Flint has been very pointed and aggressive in his attacks on me following the Netflix show, which he has every right to be. I had wanted to debate another archaeologist who's called John Hoops from the University of Kansas, because he has been by far the most obnoxious in leveling these ad hominem attacks against me, and straw men attacks, like Hancock says this, Hancock says that, when Hancock doesn't say either this or that.
Come on, man. The feels dank,
Again,
man.
if you say it enough, it begins to have an effect. And I would have liked to have called John Hoops to account and invited him to debate me, but unfortunately he backed out and he wouldn't do it. Flint Dibble, and this is genuine, Flint Dibble has had some health issues. I won't go into the details. And we've not been certain until very recently whether he will be able to make it. But kudos to him. It looks like he is going to make it.
Great.
And what
It's
he's
not
doing and
it.
what I'm doing on the 24th.
I'm just curious to see the pace with the double quick pause. That's really what I'm kind of doing right now.
Pay-per-view event.
This is a high stakes. This is a high stakes issue for both me and him, because anything can happen in a debate, and I certainly intend to make sure that I'm properly prepared. I'm sure he's going to make sure he's properly prepared. I hope we can end up hugging each other and finding some common ground, rather than all of this hatred.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
Sorry, there's one question. I'm sorry, but as society got more advanced in this time, it seems we have less and less dependence on astronomy. Astronomy, but I'm thinking 4,005 years ago to now, it just kind of filled in the blanks of what we couldn't figure out on our own. So,
Come on,
12,000 years
man.
ago, if there's a really advanced civilization, why would astronomy play as big of a role in them, where everything is pointing to X, Y, and Z stars?
Well, first of all, let's consider what we mean by advanced. What is an advanced civilization? Are we really an advanced civilization? Do we look at?
Do I have a Mark? Oh, I think I have Mark McGuire. I think I have a Mark McGuire bot.
And like scientifically, yeah.
Come on, every time I write Mark, it's like gonna come up, really?
That is one of the mistakes in looking for a quote unquote.
I gotta shut down Mark McGuire.
We tend to be looking for ourselves in our past.
I think I have a
It's
Mark
possible
McGuire
for
bot, that's what it
civilization to be
is.
advanced in other ways. We could not measure longitude. Very important issue if you're a navigator and a sailor. We could not measure longitude until 1760s, 1750s, and sometime in the second half of the 18th century. It took the creation of a very precise marine chronometer in order to be able to calculate what your longitude is. Otherwise,
No, I have not. I've
in the
not tried
middle
it,
of a
buddy.
stormy night, you could find yourself 300 miles west of where you thought you were and crashing into a coastline. It's a really good thing to know longitude. There was £1 million in the 18th century was a lot of money. There was £1 million British prize for cracking the longitude problem. And it wasn't until the second half of the 18th century that it was
Why?
solved. So it's weird that on ancient maps, copied from even more ancient source maps, there are precise longitudes, precise relative longitudes. This is one of the things that suggests to me that a civilized... The second thing is those maps show the world as it looked during the last ice age.
Tell me about it, buddy.
And most important, they show Antarctica. Our civilization didn't discover Antarctica until 1820. So if I find a map from 1520 showing Antarctica, where the map maker informs us that he based his map on much older source maps that were falling to pieces, and that he know that will fall completely apart, he's preserved the information in those maps on his map. He's copying from older, and there is Antarctica. So, did they just make it up? That's what the
Why do we still call it Antarctica? That was another thing I was like,
well, opposite of the Arctic.
yeah, but it's,
They're very recent map.
it's like, bro, he called it Antarctica. Why don't you just look at the map? You're gonna call it the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we call it Antarctica. They used to call it Terra Australis, the southern land. If you go for the Orontius Phineas map, for example, you'll find a much better.
Yeah, I thought that map said Antarctica. That's right there.
Come on, man.
oh, I actually am really excited that we're talking about Antarctica.
Antarctica is an interesting.
This
place.
is my newest rabbit
It's one of
hole.
those. It's one of those great. You see, there's Antarctica.
Come on, man.
That's the Orontius Phineas.
To the right?
There's South Africa, and there's Antarctica, and there's the tip of South America, almost touching Antarctica. It's a bit bigger than it is today, but it would have been like that during the last ice age. That's a map from 1531, and what they're saying in the legend is that here in this map I expose regions that neither Eudoxus nor, I forget the names of all the ancient maps. None of them knew about it. They were hidden in darkness, but here they are. Hidden in darkness, I suggest they're hidden in darkness on ancient maps that Orontius Phineas copied from.
Wow.
It's an anomaly that it's sitting there, and it's not good enough to say that those map makers just wanted to balance the world, so they put a fantasy continent there, which later turned out to actually be there.
Right.
That's roughly what they're saying now. So that suggests to me a culture that was capable of exploring and mapping the Earth during the last ice age. The second issue is precisely astronomy. It's ancient knowledge of precession. which again our culture attributes to the Greeks, roughly between 300 BC and 100 BC. They're supposed to have been the discoverers of precession. Precession is very hard to observe. In a single lifetime, it's a fraction of an inch on the horizon, the change. So you have to keep records over long periods of time. You have to have a system that preserves those records and passes them down. So it's the knowledge of precession that is manifested in ancient mythology and in ancient traditions, often traditions that speak of the global flood.
What? How did I even miss that key? Like, what? It's moot. It's just moot.
Precession. Again, I don't want to get too boring, but precession proceeds at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. And this is the key number that is found in ancient mythology around the world, and variations of that number. So 72 plus 36 is 108. 108 is another precessional number. 108 divided by 2 is 54. That's another precessional number. That's why on the bridge at Angkor Thom, in Angkor in Cambodia, you have 54 figures on either side of the bridge. And what are they doing? They're hauling on the body of the serpent Vasuki, who is wrapped around Mount Mandara, and they are churning the Milky Ocean. The argument is that this is a symbol for precession. That is taking place there, and the numbers are multiplied. And another example I often give is the Great Pyramid itself. And it's very important, I made this point at the beginning, it's very important that when people want to check this calculation, that they use the true original height of the Great Pyramid, the 481 feet that it would have risen to, rather than its rather stunted 450 plus feet today. When you use the true original height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth. And when you measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. Now, why does 43,200 matter? It's 600 times 72. It's another precessional number. It's a number generated by the precessional motion of the Earth itself. And there we enter a very clever piece of work. Great Pyramid is almost perfectly aligned to true north. It's within 3/60ths of a single degree of true north. It's an error, but it's really good. When you look at a monument on that scale, 6 million tons, 481 feet tall, you know, and you get it within 3/60ths of a degree of true north, you are doing very accurate work. And they were saying something else.
I think they figured that out back in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They were like,
they used astronomy. They used astronomy to figure it out.
but no, that they messed up a little.
I think they did the best they could. I think they did the best they could. We also have to take account of movements of the Earth itself.
So it might have been right at the time.
There might have been a slight shift in the tectonic plates underneath. I'm not sure, but the fact is it's 3/60ths off now.
Okay.
Mate, come on, man. Come on, man, mate. Come on, dude.
Wanted to lock it in to the key cardinal directions. It's perfectly true north, perfectly true south, perfectly true east.
That's too much, dude.
West, within 3/60ths of a single degree. The cardinal directions of this planet mattered. They were speaking to the Earth.
That's hilarious.
Secondly,
Come
it's
on,
located on latitude 30 degrees north, give or take a few seconds of arc. And latitude 30 degrees north is 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. Okay, so that's not an insignificant latitude. It's a significant latitude. It seems like the monument is speaking to the Earth. And then we find that it encodes the dimensions of the Earth on a scale provided by a key motion of the Earth itself, namely the Earth's precession, operating at the rate of 1 degree every 72 years. Multiply that by 600, you get 43,200. That's the scale the pyramid is built on, 1 to 43,200. So it's a monument that speaks to the Earth, that is aligned to the cardinal directions of the Earth, and that encodes the dimensions of the Earth on a scale defined
how does
by
it
the Earth's
decide what it decides to say? I mean, like, what are they even
get the measurements right to realize that they're not dealing with a 450-foot tall monument, but a 481-foot tall monument. Nobody disputes that. The pi, which is used to calculate the diameter and circumference of a circle, is built into the Great Pyramid. This is broadly accepted by the Egyptians. It's just that they regard it as a coincidence.
And your theory is also that the ancient Egyptians did this, right? Because you said they did most of the work.
Yes,
Not it.
I think they did. I think it was finished off. You define the very moment you start building that 52.
I am liking the faster pauses though at the end. It is nice.
Right.
It is nice.
That's there from the beginning.
And what was their daily ritual use for the pyramids of Giza that you theorize?
Well, actually nobody has any idea. The Great Pyramid was sealed. It was a sealed monument. So in roughly 900 AD, forgive me if I don't give you the exact date, give or take 50 years, the Caliph who was running Egypt at the time, wanted to get inside the Great Pyramid. This is 400 years before the earthquake. The facing stones are still in place. He could not find the true entrance to the Great Pyramid. It turned out that it could have been found. According to accounts, there was some sort of, almost like a button that you pressed, and the doorway would slide, the facing stones would slide away, and you could find the true entrance. But he couldn't find that. So, but he did know that other pyramids had their entrance in the north face, other older pyramids, like the Pyramid of Unas. He knew they had their entrance in the north face. So he started hacking away at the north face of the Great Pyramid. And that is the entrance through which you will have gone when you entered the Great Pyramid. It's called Mamun's Hole. He and his team hacked it out with sledgehammers and chisels, and they broke their way in to the north face. And then as they were doing so, they heard a block falling in a hollow space. And then they knew they were onto something. That block that fell, caused by the vibrations that they had caused, must have been in some kind of passageway or chamber. So they headed towards that sound, and that's where they found the original passageway system of the Great Pyramid, which after you've gone through Mamun's Hole, around the little corner where it's all cut out of the rock, and then you find yourself going up into first of all, the ascending corridor, and then the Grand Gallery, which is the most majestic structure. They found the original.
Okay, I'm improving my quick pauses now. That's going to help a lot. Just even consistency.
Okay, I want to talk about Antarctica. Because I think this is going to be the new obsession. I feel like it's trending super high. Who knows if there's any truth to it, but a friend of ours who will remain nameless.
Thanks, Goose.
Yeah. Got to go on a cool experience, trip, etc. And he said a couple interesting things. He said
Bro, I think, well, Elusive, do you think...
He said way more.
Do you release strafe when you shoot them?
I think the illusion made from looking at
or do you shoot them? Do you shoot them in the head? Do you shoot one bullet in the head at full strafe?
Oh, is that what the little etchings
around the
are?
edges there? Interesting.
Now he also said this. He said a couple things. He said there is a pact with every country that has a slice of it that they will not dig or remove any minerals from Antarctica. And he even said that a scientist was there. Said to them, World War III will not start.
Okay, gotta refresh it. One or two shots, yeah.
They are clearly protecting or preserving something that may or may not be under, I believe it's 3 miles, Mark was saying earlier.
I think warping
now,
might be fastest, but I might be wrong. Wow, strafing, interesting.
Yeah, I was reading an article that perhaps 90 million years ago there was a lush rainforest.
Yeah, I've lost way more runs.
Ice on the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, that's probably true. If you go
due to trying to warp it, you know.
You would find that the Earth's climate was very different from how it is today. And there's
oh, this is a really good run. Don't boost me out. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the human species?
Yes. This is where it gets tricky.
And this is where it gets tricky. The Homo sapiens line descends from a line that goes back about 6 million years, not much further than that. If we accept
I hate this game. I really hate this game, guys.
So
oh, okay, that's good.
Antarctica is supposed to have been as cold and as frozen.
Better chance to like boost. So I'm gonna fill my water.
Gods,
Be back and take a little break. Not a little break, but like maybe 5 minutes. I'm gonna fill my water. Be back. For a late boost, so interesting. Yeah.
And I was interested in it because of the work of a previous researcher called Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood wrote a number of very important books. One of them is called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which precisely goes into this issue of ancient maps.
Is there a buzz in the Switch? Do you guys hear a buzz?
How the world was supposed to be known at that time. And another is called The Path of the Pole. And he proposed a phenomenon that he called Earth displacement, whereby from time to time,
does the music sound
the
fucked on the Switch?
crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift.
Alright, I'm gonna have to listen to it.
In place, so that it could like, so if you imagine a very loose orange skin the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but
It looks like it may have
the
lost
skin
its
around it.
channel.
Well, obviously then, if that happens, Antarctica could have been in warmer latitudes and could have been shifted into colder latitudes.
And
It's
how often
crackling.
does that happen?
Well, does it happen at all is the first question. I mean, of all the theories I've looked at and supported, this is the one that I've come in for the most criticism for. And I've been much more interested recently in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that a cataclysm occurred around 12,800 years ago, caused by impacts of comet fragments, and we can go into that. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, although I was interested in comets, I was more interested in Earth crust displacement. And the standard academic response to that is, look, Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years, and that rules out the whole Earth crust displacement argument.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It's gone now. Yeah, I turned it off now. One sec. Thank you, buddies. Thank you, my friends.
Again, it's very technical. That moves in one piece. There's a
Okay, I might have to restart stream. One sec. Give me a sec. I might have to restart stream. Okay, let me let me stop stream and restart stream. I'm gonna have to. Thanks for being here.